project will be eligible to enter the ACEC national competition to be announced later this year. So we're hopeful to get some good news there, Patrick. For utilities, Barry, engineering, the new heritage drainage basin interceptor project was designed to improve a failing sewer infrastructure at the former Heritage USA site in Fort Mill. This project included almost 7,000 feet of 24-inch gravity sewer pipe, 1,900 feet of 18-inch gravity sewer pipe, and 36 manholes spread over 26 wastewater service areas and more than a dozen pump stations. Michael Baker International was the engineering firm on this project, and the new basin infrastructure is now reliable, safe, and provides required capability. I'll come back around now and present them with their plaques.
You, Patrick.
Congratulations, gentlemen, on your award. You make us proud in York County. We appreciate what you do for us. If you'd like to speak, you certainly can. We got plenty of other, that's right.
They're engineers, they don't have much to say.
That's right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I will have a point of order. Apparently, the audio is not working for those who are watching remotely. Does that present an issue for us in this meeting?
No, it does not.
All right. All right. At this time, we move now to public forum session. Public forum session is an opportunity for any individuals in the community who want to come and address council on a council-related issue. We allow folks to sign up at the beginning of the meeting, and you have 2 minutes of uninterrupted time. At the 2-minute mark, I have to interrupt you. So what I would ask that you do is when you see, do we have, is that audio working, Karen? Is the screen going to work? We are having technical difficulties. Stand by. It's not going to work. I guess I can set my clock. So when I call your name, if you will please come forward, give your name, state your address, and I will start the clock at 2 minutes. Here we go. Good. If you'll pay attention to the screen in front of you when you're speaking, it will go to a yellow and then it'll go to a red. When you get to the red, if you'll please stop your comments so that I don't have to interrupt you, that will make my life much better. We'll start now with Karen Sweeney. Well, we're going to check because this is working
Test.
now. There we go.
Hey.
It's working.
Okay. So my name is Karen Sweeney, and I live in Fort Mill, 2382 Woodridge Drive. And my concern is about the solar panel plant that I've learned that is being proposed to go in basically across the street from my neighborhood. And one of the main concerns that I have as far as voicing it is the number of people that are actually going to be employed there. I'm hearing that it is going to be 400 to 800 people per shift, 2 shifts a day, or 7 days a week. And that's just a start. What I'm concerned about is when it starts to gain speed as far as the growth is concerned, how many more people are going to be coming in to work at that location. Then the 3rd shift is going to come, so now you're talking 7 days a week, 24/7. There's also the trucking that is going to be involved with raw materials coming in for these people to be able to work with, and then the finished product that's going to be going out. So then you've got trucking that is going to be coming into this place, which is also a 2-lane road. Another concern that I have as well is I've learned that there's going to be an elementary school and a middle school that are going to be within 1 mile of this, I think, light industrial building. There's a concern about that. What kind of impact is it going to have on the children? What kind of health impact is it going to be? Do we have any information about the environmental impact? The water coming in, the wastewater that is going to be going out. How is that going to impact the children around that area, plus the people? The other thing is these people that as they're making $17 to $19 an hour, how are they going to be able to afford homes in that area? When the average income for this area is about $45,000 a year, the homes are over $300,000, like $300,000, $330,000 plus. So they're not going to be able to buy property in the area. So now you're talking about that the tax impacts. How are they going to be able to pay taxes and for any property that they could have potentially owned? But then that also says that without the taxes, how are they going to be able to pay for road upkeep and teachers? That's just to begin, but thank you.
Cindy Helms.
My name is Cindy Helms. My address is 2276 Williford Road, Rock Hill. I'm here tonight concerning the update to the York County Comprehensive Plan, specifically in the southeastern side of the county. We are a rural residential community. We do not want industrial in our area just because there's a railroad there. I am asking that the council make the comprehensive plan match the current zoning on Hall Spencer and Highway 21 for RS 40 and RUD, that it would not go industrial, it would not even go artisan, that it would remain RUD and RS 40. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Cindy Cox. If y'all could, just out of respect for everyone who's going to speak, if y'all could allow them to come forward and.
Hi.
Thank you, ma'am.
Cindy Cox, 3390 Harmony Road in Catawba. Thank you for listening to the concerns of the residents of southeastern York County. I want to encourage you to think of the many changes that will take place in that area of the county if the proposed section off of McAllister Road is zoned industrial in the new comprehensive plan. The intermodal location will become a reality, and along with it will come gas stations, diesel tank storage companies, other industries that will choose to be located next to the location of the containers holding their raw materials. How does this drastic change to the existing farmland stay in keeping with the goals listed in the comprehensive plan to ensure that rural landscapes, prime agricultural farmland, and scenic open spaces are protected and that growth is not out of character with inherent attributes? If the comprehensive plan is adopted with that section industrial, the amount of rail cars will expand exponentially, and with that increased chance of derailment. That is pure statistics. And when those rail cars are loaded onto tractor trailers, the chance of vehicle accidents will also increase. We do not want to become a news story and have to worry about the lives of our children. I think everyone in this room can sympathize with the citizens of East Palestine, Ohio. This derailment has caused the people of that area to have to wonder about the toxicity of their homes and surrounding land. They have been told to use bottled water. Can you use bottled water to bathe your children, shower, wash your clothing, water your produce crops, give water to the animals, both domestic and wild? They will never be able to sell their homes because no one is going to voluntarily move there. These families will have to leave their homes and their equity in those homes and start over at zero. They will have to constantly wonder when the next shoe will drop with a potential cancer cluster. We do not want to be the next East Palestine. We implore you to please leave the land off of McAllister as rural.
Thank you, ma'am. Right on the dot. Brad Smith. Is Brad Smith here?
Bradford Smith, 2148 Middlebridge Court, Fort Mill, South Carolina. I'm the first speaker talked about the plant, I guess, that's solar panels. I just found about this a couple days ago. In the toxicity just to produce the plant, and not the building, but the materials and the water that's going to be discharged and all that. I don't know that they really know the impact of that, and that's very, very important, because the schools are going to be there, the groundwater. There's going to be all these trucks, and those are small roads, and they're already beat up. And that road that cuts across where the schools are going to be, you know, that's all going to be impacted by whatever they're doing there, and it's going to get bigger. From what I understand, the buildings are massive, and they may go into more production, and of course they want to build. I understand this company is out of Canada. They have 2 facilities, I believe, up in Washington State, in that area there. So I think the council really should do a really good job of looking at the environmental impact that this production facility is going to do, not to mention the schools and the roads and all the other impact. And there's that Highway 21 is a disaster right now. So hopefully, I know they're planning to widen it and build it, but that's going to take years. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. D. Hadman. D. Hadman. I may not be pronouncing this last name. I couldn't read it. Once again, I'll ask, just out of respect for all of the speakers, if y'all could wait till we get through the entire, all these folks before we do the applause, that's asked that you refrain from that. We have 15 individuals who've signed up. Thank you, ma'am.
Sure. D. Hodnett, 513 Fig Street, Fort Mill, South Carolina. I didn't know I was going to be speaking tonight. I want to say I have the same concerns that the previous speakers, both for the trucking issue, the rail car issue, and I came specifically about Highway 21 and the solar panel manufacturing facility that's proposed on Highway 21. As it was mentioned before, 21 is 2 lanes, and it's projected about 800 cars and trucks would be on this daily. We can't take that. It's already busy with just us. I also am very concerned about what environmental studies have been done regarding this facility. I would like that published so we can see exactly who did what and what they said. I think that's a big concern since we all have seen, as it was mentioned before, East Palestine, Ohio. And I also have a concern about the pay for these people and where they will be housed. It's a lot of people working at this plant, and I don't think they're going to be able to afford living in our neck of the woods, so that's a concern. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Denise Bach.
Denise Bach, 254 Hammond Road, Fort Mill. Regarding the solar panel plant, it's a terrible idea. I've lived here since 1984, and I've lived within a mile that whole time of that proposed site. So I've seen the traffic grow, and it's needed to be widened for decades, literally. I was told years ago that it was going to be widened by 2010. Didn't happen. More development, more development. So that came and went, you know, as the council kept allowing the developers and not listening to the people. Commuting to Charlotte is a nightmare. The longest part of the commute is just getting out of the neighborhood because there's two-lane roads going into one, and I know you're planning on widening it, but we're not there yet. We, the people, have been upset about having development shoved down our throats year after year with no infrastructure to handle it. And I was so fed up with this that when we finally got District 7 and our own rep, I went and literally knocked on hundreds of doors. And I talked to people face to face, and everybody except for one person was upset about the roads. The one person who was not upset was a developer. Everybody is concerned about having this thing go in there. We cannot handle that kind of traffic. You know, I'm concerned about the environment, and we still have new development coming in right now. It's going to take time to redo roads and lights and things like that, and we are going to be in a mess. So I'm asking you all to vote no on this. This to me is common sense. And we the people put you in there, and we need to have you listening to we the people and not the developers. Thank you for your time.
Tom Bach.
Tom Bach, 254 Hammond Road, Fort Mill. It's about the solar panel facility. So just in the last 10 years that I've lived here, so there's all these developments: Willow Oaks, Carolina Orchards, Springfield Town Center, Anniston Chase. And then what I heard, there was about 6 developments just in Regent Park only, with thousands of homes going up in those 10 years. No widening. Even though a future widening project is down the line, you're still looking at a year or two to build the facility, meaning the roadway. We don't know how that matches up with the solar panel facility. Projected heavy truck traffic causes problems with existing and proposed pavement, shoulders, curb and gutter, and any roadway feature that you have. Future traffic lighting, timing through that, all those intersections through there. There's got to be about 3 or 4 lights through that 2-lane section. When trucks turn onto Highway 21 from this facility, it's going to increase the time of that light along 21, because the trucks, it takes them a lot longer to turn. Another one last concern is, with this being probably a very prosperous facility, future expansion will probably occur, adding more people. And then also, what you don't think about is future businesses that are related to solar panels, like manufacturing, fabrication, industrial, technology businesses that are going to be coming if this facility is prosperous. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir. Wally Buchanan.
Greetings, good to see y'all again and again and again. I live in the most popular place in Fort Mill. I live on Baxter Lane, 256. Our family's been there since 1941. We came and asked you not to shut our road down. You shut our road down. Now we have to go out by Carolina's Parkway at a Mexican restaurant at a red light. We've had a problem with the red light area. They still double parking trucks from Ross Dress for Less. It said Mike Johnson told us. Anybody remember Mike Johnson, the guy with the weed eater and the short pants and no string in it? Mike Johnson told us that we would never have to worry about industry. He told me and 5 of our family members that it would never be anything except a warehouse. And I come here to hold the county to its word. It said, instead of y'all are going to offer these folks 4% tax break, our family has been paying 6% on the properties and the properties that we owned. And why are y'all going to let them have it for 4%? I'm a big fan of Joe Kennedy. And I tell you what, when you own property in York County at that end, you don't own an ugly woman. You don't have to have a great diary to get rid of her. They should be paying 10% for the privilege of being in our area. We're not selling something ugly. We are the princes of York County. I want to know if they have turned any MSDS sheets. Every chemical that comes in the plant by federal government has to have an MSDS sheet. Have they turned them in? The pay, they've already covered that. Are they going to get free water? How much water is it going to take? I've heard various amounts, some even including 800,000 gallons of water. That must be the reason you put a 2 million gallon water tank in my daughter's yard.
Thank you, sir.
Now it comes together.
Thank you, sir.
I'm a Baptist preacher. I can't say I have in 2 minutes.
That explains a lot. Thank you, sir.
God bless y'all.
Esther Buchanan.
Hi,
Is this the tag team?
Yes, I'm Esther Buchanan, 256 Baxter Lane, Fort Mill. And my main concern is the solar panels company coming in, and can you guarantee us safe air, safe soil, water? And that's one of my main concerns, especially with the schools that's going to be back to these plants. I mean, it's going to be less than a mile with all those children. And as they produce these things in the plants, that air's got to go out of the building, and it's going to go somewhere. It's going to go in my backyard where my family lives, but it's also going to go to all the schools where all those children are. And of course, we've got the traffic. It's terrible, terrible. Can't imagine, 800 cars coming in and out. I went and talked to the people that's behind us today only because of the traffic that where we pull out, we stop, and they're supposed to stop, they don't stop. They just keep going. And there's going to be an accident there one day. So those are my two main concerns. And like he said, the DS sheets with the chemicals and stuff, that really tugs at me, the environment. Oh, he wants me to tell you what all's in the solar panels. 35 minerals are in there. High purity and all this. I can't say all this stuff.
Ask her after the meeting, she'll share her 25 pages of chemicals.
There are a lot of chemicals, and it's very concerning. And not everybody knows what all that's made of, and how it does concern us. And I wish I could give you more details, I wish he could have took my time so he could give you all those details. But we are very concerned about the air and the water and the land and the children that's going to be breathing this air.
Thank you, ma'am. Brian Ballard.
Brian Ballard, 2561 South Anderson in Catawba. 1991, Dunsmuir, California, 19,000 gallons of metamsodium, varium wildlife killed in a 40-mile radius. 1992, Superior, Wisconsin, a toxic cloud of cancer-causing benzene stretching 20 miles long and 5 miles wide. 80,000 evacuated, 17 went to hospital, long-term effects still unknown. 2002, Minot, North Dakota, anhydrous ammonia, 1 death, 11 serious injuries, 322 exposure injuries, residents trapped in their homes. 2005, Graniteville, South Carolina, liquid chlorine, 9 killed, 5,400 evacuated in a 1-mile radius, 550 treated. After a 15-year follow-up, the community suffers decreased lung function and increased blood pressure. 2012, Paulsboro, New Jersey, 23,000 gallons of vinyl chloride, hundreds evacuated, 2,000 residents with unknown long-term health risks. 2023, East Palestine, Ohio, vinyl chloride and 3 other chemicals released, impact still unknown. 2023, Catawba, South Carolina, no real incident yet, but if heavy industrial is zoned, the potential for environmental disaster is exponentially increased for a community with a higher population than originally planned. Please deny this rezoning.
Thank you, sir. Jeff Farrar.
I'm Jeff Farrar, 3572 Harmony Road, Catawba. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I am speaking to, as the last gentleman, to ask you to deny the rezoning for the CSX property that's defined east of Route 21 and north of McAllister, and also any along Hall Spencer Road. It's my understanding that this is now rural and that the comprehensive plan would change that to industrial. I had some problems in deciding what to talk to you about today. Originally, I was going to talk about the traffic problems. The trucks coming out of a rail intermodal are not going to be limited, and they are not going to restrict their travel along the 21 route up to 77. They will use every single one of those small 2-lane back roads that crisscross through Catawba to access the 3 interchanges along 77 from 901 Porter Road and the 21 change. And unless you're going to put a deputy at every one of those small roads, it's not going to stop them. I was also going to talk about precision scheduled railroading, which is a business model that all the railroad companies in the United States use. It is a disaster. It has caused almost every one of those disasters that earlier gentlemen spoke about, because at making more profit, at the expense of their customers, their employees, and the communities these trains go through, the railroads are squeezing blood out of their pennies. But in the end, what I want to ask is, why is this even an issue? Apparently, CSX hasn't even requested that this zoning change be made. So it seems to be, it's occurring kind of under the table, back door, and in the dark at night, and no one is even really, CSX or any industrial complex hasn't come and said, this is why we want it. We don't want a solar power plant any more than we want a rail intermodal.
Thank you, sir.
Don't make it industrial.
Brandon Whitley.
Brandon Whitley, 4068 Bamborough Drive, Fort Mill. I live in Regent Park, and I've lived there for 7 years, and it's been progressively picking up steam over those 7 years. The golf course was taken away in Regent Park. They built houses, and they built condos, and they built apartments, and then Springfield down 21 away from the solar plant, where this proposed solar plant is also picking up steam, and traffic is picked up. The biggest issue is putting the cart before the horse. Until that road is widened and some traffic stuff is done, because probably 2 miles away is also the Amazon plant, and Amazon comes traffic from Amazon's distribution center right over the border is there. I'm not even getting into the SDD, the chemicals and everything else at this point. The biggest issue is the expansion first. Until that expansion's done, there has to be another location to place this thing. I'm not an expert on solar panels or anything else like that, but I know that road cannot handle that much traffic, period. It takes you, every time there's an accident on 77, they bypass on 21 and use it going southbound or northbound. So rush hours, it's a parking lot, Monday through Friday. I'm retired from the Army, so I get to see the different hours of the day and know which times I'm leaving and know which way I'm going, because you can't get out on 21 at all. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bonnie Dove. You're not going to speak? I can't hear. Not going to speak, okay. Kathleen Jordan.
I didn't get a chance to speak to y'all last week.
You might want to wait till you get to the mic.
I said I didn't get a chance to speak to you last week. I'm here to propose that you guys pass a bill for McAfee Court. We are people too. We have a right to live where we want. This is our family that live in that trailer court. We love it there. It's not perfect, but we care about it. So please pass a bill for McAfee Court. In God's name.
Thank you, ma'am. Lee Osteen. She's written down here. Are you on McAfee 1028 McAfee Court? Lee Osteen.
Lee Osteen. My address is 647 DeBerry Hollow in Rock Hill. I own a farm at 2600 Bill Wilson Road, and I'm also speaking about McAfee Court. And that's a development for 400 rental lots on 155 acres. And I actually just found out Saturday about it, but I did read the county staff's recommendation, and basically I just ask you to follow those recommendations. They did a great job analyzing it, and I would just ask you to follow those recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That concludes our public forum session. Thank you all for your comments. I know that council is taking them seriously. Do we have a motion on consent agenda? You turn on your mic.
I'd like to pull item number 1 and move it to the later in the meeting, the minutes of the Finance and Operations Committee, please.
All right, we will move the minutes of F&O to number 3 in new business. Are there any other removals from consent?
No, none here.
Do we have a motion with the amendment?
Second.
I don't think we have a first.
Your first.
I think you just removed something. Did you make a motion with the amendment? If not, go ahead and do. To approve consent with number 1 out. Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We move now to our first public hearing, which I understand the applicant, well, let me read it. Rezoning action, hold a public hearing and consider first reading, case number 23-01, tax map number 13000000016, to rezone from AGC to RUD, 3 acres in District 3. It's my understanding that this applicant has withdrawn this request and that we do not have any action item on this. I will say, so there's nothing for us to have a public hearing about, and there's nothing for us to move ahead with. If there is someone here who wanted to speak at the public hearing on that item, please understand that the applicant would need to completely refile a new application on this, which would require them to pay the fee, go to the planning commission, and then come to the council again. That's how that process works. If you have any other questions, you can ask the clerk, Karen Brogdon, when you walk out of the building. She's on the end of our row here. We move now to the second public hearing, rezoning action. Hold a public hearing and consider first reading, case number 23-02, tax map number 38300000009, to rezone from AGC to RUD, 5.7 acres in District 2. Mr. Buono.
Good evening, Council. So this request is to rezone that 5.7 acre parcel depicted here from AGC to RUD. The applicant intends to subdivide it into 2 lots for single-family homes. So you can see the zoning map here. There's a mix of AGC, including the subject parcel and RSF 40 in the immediate vicinity. And staff recommends approval for this rezoning application. It's somewhat consistent with the comp plan and the future land use map. It would not serve to redevelop a property that is currently being used for agriculture. The residential parcels that are proposed by the applicant are similar in size to those in the immediate vicinity, and the uses allowed in the RUD district excuse me, are compatible with this area. And by an 8-0 vote, Planning Commission likewise recommends approval.
Are there any questions for staff? All right. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak against this rezoning request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor?
Second.
Motion and second to close public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, public hearing is closed. Do we have a new motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We move now to public hearing item number 3, rezoning action. Hold a public hearing and consider first reading, case number 23-03, tax map number 52300000031, to rezone from AGC to RUD, 4.4 acres in District 5. Mr. Buono.
Yeah, so this is similarly rezoning from AGC to RUD. The area outlined in blue there is the portion of the property that's the subject of the rezoning. So they're looking to subdivide, and they don't quite have enough acreage to make it work to stay in the AGC district, so they need to rezone to RUD to get that additional lot behind the existing home. And their intent is to have another single-family home built behind that one. So you can see here the zoning district is in the area is a mix of agricultural, conservation, and RUD. The future land use map in this area is all agriculture. Staff recommends approval with a condition. So this is similarly somewhat consistent with the comp plan and future land use map to the previous application. It does not serve to redevelop a property that is currently used for agriculture. There are other residential parcels of this similar size in the immediate area, and RUD is also compatible with the area, the uses that are allowed in that district. And by an 8-0 vote, Planning Commission likewise recommends approval with the same condition. and it should be a familiar one by now that they have 90 days to record a subdivision that aligns with the rezoning.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any questions for staff?
I have a question. So they're only rezoning a portion of the 10.5 acres, so the other remaining 6.5 is going to remain AGC?
That's correct.
Any other questions? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak against this request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor?
Move to close.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Do we have a new motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve
Madam Chair, point of order, is that with the condition?
with the conditions.
With conditions.
And you approve that?
Motion
Any
to
other,
approve. Yep.
any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We move now to item number 4, rezoning action. Hold a public hearing and consider first reading, case number 23-04, tax map number 66600000002003003 666, that's a bad number, 02020002 004 005 006 007 through 12. Nope. 008 009 010 012 and 016 to rezone from UD to LI, 5.064 acres in District 5. Mr. Bueno.
Yes, this application is a little more complicated than the previous two. So the request is UD to LI, and as the chair had to read through, it does have 13 parcels associated with the rezoning, but it covers just over 5 acres. It's here at the intersection of Anderson Road and Rainey Street. So one property owner has purchased all of the parcels that are outlined here in red. There are a couple along Rainey Street on the west side that they did not purchase. So that might be difficult to see here, but there are a couple of parcels there that they do not own. So the applicant proposes to locate a trucking operation on the site. This is a site that's an existing non-residential use, and they are looking to have a trucking operation on the site, and they started to establish that use without getting any permitting, so they're currently under violation as the trucking operation use is not permitted in the UD district, so that is why they are here to request a rezoning to LI.
I need to ask some questions.
So here's the zoning map there on the left. So the light gray is Rock Hill, so that's city jurisdiction there on the west side of Anderson. On the east side of Anderson, you'll see the UD district is in the gray there. RSF 30 is the yellow and ID is the purple. And this is probably a pretty good example of how the legacy UD district can be pretty harmful in terms of zoning context for a mix of uses, because you do have a lot of industrial uses, a lot of commercial uses, and there are a couple of residential homes that are interspersed amongst these parcels. So the future land use designation in brown there is municipal infill. This is a donut hole for the city of Rock Hill area. It's a large donut hole, but there's not a lot of context for planning around this from a county perspective. So the municipal infill designation looks at what the Rock Hill comprehensive plan looks for future land use, and their designation identifies this area as a little bit of community, commercial, and employment center, neither of which would be applicable to a trucking operation. So staff does recommend approval on this with some conditions, and I'll go through the reason for that. So while the proposal is not necessarily consistent with the comp plan and future land use map in terms of the district, and that's because the comp plan is referring to the city of Rock Hill's comp plan for what they're looking for. So it doesn't match their designation for employment center or community commercial. However, the UD zoning in the area has created such an incompatible mix of uses in this area that no one district would be fully compatible with the entire Anderson Road, Rainey Street area. So it's either we try to allow projects that can make cohesive sense and try to isolate the non-commercial with the residential, or it all freezes in place and it's stuck in a UD zoning going forward. So the proximity to I-77 is appropriate for a trucking operation, and staff recommends several conditions that seek to minimize the impact that the continued commercial use of this property would have on adjacent residences on Rainey Street, while allowing the site to continue with its historic non-residential use. And by an 8-0 vote, Planning Commission likewise recommended approval with those same conditions. And those conditions are, number one, no vehicular access drives are permitted onto Rainey Street from any of the parcels included in the application. And just for reference again, so you can see where Rainey Street comes off of Anderson, this condition would keep it so that any commercial access to this property would have to be on Anderson, so someone could not come into the Rainey Street neighborhood and access this parcel for commercial purposes. Number two is a type C buffer shall be required along the Rainey Street frontage for all application parcels on Rainey Street. So if we go back to the site plan for a moment here, normally for a property, a buffer requirement along a right-of-way like Rainey Street is more of an aesthetic one. So you can see here they've drawn what our current code requires for a buffer, and it's very narrow, not a lot of trees in it. So we are recommending a higher buffer, type C, so it's kind of 2 rungs higher if you think about that, so that the properties that are across the street on Rainey Street have a thicker buffer from that commercial use of that property. And the third is the site plan for the proposed development shall be limited to 1 access point on North Anderson Road. All other access points shall be removed prior to the establishment of the use. So this has several curb cuts, and this is seeking to try to make it a much more safe situation for those traveling on Anderson and looking to access the site.
Thank you, Jonathan. This is in my district, so I have a few questions I hope to answer so that folks who are here listening can understand. So the UD district, what is currently allowed by right that would not require a rezoning?
Yes, so it's a long list because UD, while it stands for Urban Development, the joke in the planning department is used to stand for UD or you decide. So it used to include all of the uses that the county allowed. And that has been attritioned out over the years, but there are still 67 different uses that are allowed in UD by right. So that includes hotels, livestock, farming, landscape supply, art studio, outdoor recreation, banks, medical office, several different categories of manufacturing, industrial laundromat plants, machine shops, car washes, vehicle sales, and many more.
Thank you, sir. And those will allow by right without the buffering requirements?
They would still have to have buffering. So
is the type C buffering, would that be required in any of those UD designations?
So they would have to have buffering, and buffering is depends on what the proposed use is and what they are adjacent to. So in terms of buffering a right-of-way, the requirement for UD plus the and this trucking operation would be the same. It's that lower aesthetic buffer. So the proposed condition here would be a higher level of buffer that would be required by right.
Okay. Is a gas station one of the things that's allowed by right in UD?
Yes.
Okay. What you mentioned that the city of Rock Hills, I mean, this is a donut hole. I mean, it makes it very difficult for folks like us who are sitting here to try and figure out the right approach. What is the Rock Hill comp plan call for? Do you know? Is it residential?
It calls for employment, so they're really looking for employment-driven uses, and this does not meet that standard.
Okay. Has the city of Rock Hill been asked to pass on this? Do you know any information from them or from ED?
No, we don't directly seek the city's input on rezoning applications in the county, but we do consult what their plan says, so we read through it.
I guess the reason why I'm asking is that if they go to the city, do you know what they would allow if this is not approved with the conditions that are placed on it?
They would have to come forward to the city for a proposal for annexation, and the city would analyze it both from a perspective of does it meet their comp plan, what zoning district should it go into in the city, and whether they're willing to serve it with public utilities.
You said the applicant was currently in violation.
Yes.
When they made Has that violation been rectified?
So this rezoning is in furtherance of rectifying that. So if council were to approve the rezoning, the next step in the process for them would to be continued with their site plan. And once they get to a site plan, they would have to, an approved site plan, they would have to build the site to meet all of our standards, and that would clear them of the violation. So this is just the first step in clearing that violation.
Can you please describe what a type C buffer is, which is one of the conditions?
Yes, so our buffer table is very mathy. So there are tiers of buffering. So there's A, B, and C, and we also have D and right-of-way buffers. So your right-of-way buffers are aesthetic in nature, as well as type A. So there's really not much of a physical buffer. So there's short depth and not a lot of plantings required. In addition to that, different buffering is different depths and numbers of plantings in a buffer is required based on the size of the proposed development. So we have 3 tiers. So it would be anything up to, I think, 2.5 acres and below has to have a lower tier, and then 2.5 to 10, and then anything higher than 10. So in terms of this development, a type A buffer or a minor road buffer would be 10 feet in width, and it would contain about 3 trees and 14 shrubs per 100 linear feet, whereas a type C buffer in this particular context would be 30 feet deep with 10 trees and 36 shrubs per 100 linear feet plus a 6-foot fence, or they could opt to install an 8-foot fence and their depth would go down to 25 feet and have a little bit fewer plantings. So very mathy, but it seeks to create context for the size of the development going in and the land use relationship with the adjacent properties.
So just so I'm clear on the other UD designations that you identified, for instance, like a gas station, would that be a type A by right?
So it's going to depend on the use itself. So it's not necessarily dependent upon the zoning district, but the use. So each use falls into a big bucket, a big category of uses. So manufacturing falls into the industrial uses, so that all has one type of buffer that's applied. Same thing with residential, they all fit into different categories. So it would depend on the proposed use.
So for instance, with industrial, what would that require?
Up against residential, if the question were up against residential, that would require a D, type D.
Okay. Any other questions from council?
Yeah, I got one quick question. Jonathan, what is the, from a traffic study perspective, where do we lie on that component? Has the traffic study been completed? If not, where do we fall under the TIA?
On that, I'm not certain because the TIA is not required at the rezoning stage. They would have to have one approved in order to get an approved site plan.
Right.
So that's also part of the process for them.
Right. Okay. So that component hasn't been completed yet at this point. Not at this point, understood. But right. But to your knowledge, it's not completed.
To my knowledge.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one more. Type D buffer, what is that?
Again, it's going to be context sensitive, but I believe there's a range of 50 feet to 75 feet, and because of the increased depth, there are going to be more plantings required, and it's really meant to be an opaque buffer, so it's going to be heavily planted or with existing trees if possible.
Okay. No other questions? At this time, we now move into our public hearing. If there's anyone here who wishes to speak against this rezoning request, if you'll come forward and give your name and address.
Hi, my name is Lisa Sharp, and I have a residence right behind, this business is going right behind my house. Along with my elderly neighbor, I'm speaking for 6 people in my community. We have issues with the trucks. Well, y'all fixed the problem coming onto Rainey Street, which I agree with completely because it's a small street and a lot of kids. I need to know the buffering for I have residential RSF. What is that for me? What does that mean for me? That's what I need to know. And, you know, I understand that I'm in that zone where you're trying to move everything to industrial. But I would just like it to be a respectful transition. I don't want, we already have a trucking company down there, and that's why a lot of people don't want it over there. Because they don't bother with boundaries. You know, I went out on my porch the other day, there was so much dust over there, you couldn't even see the trucks. They have just a regular fence with plastic going through it, which they knocked down part of and haven't fixed. You know, we deal with all of that over there already. And I don't want to not be able to open my windows. You know, I worry, we all have wells. I worry about the oil and the gas and the antifreeze that trucks tend to leak, and it being right behind me. I worry about the noise because they're gonna use impact tools. They're loud. And from what I understand, and I don't know if it's true, but the building that is right behind me is a metal building, 44 feet from the property line. That is gonna be loud when you put impact tools in a metal building. I mean, I read that they were going to the City of Rock Hill Electric, which I had been told by the city that if they did that, they would be annexed into the city. Is that true or false?
Jonathan, can you answer that?
The city is not obligated to annex property if they provide electrical power. I know that's typically something they would look to do, but there's nothing that obligates them to do that.
So I'm concerned because y'all are all over the place with these buffers. And they're right up to my property line on the side of me. Bought it right up to my property line, right up to the property line behind me. So between them coming in and the other place and the train, it's just too much. And I don't want a fence like I want a real fence where I don't see them or hear them. They came in, didn't get any permits, took down all the shrubbery, trees on there's a fence between my property and theirs. They took down all of that. I told him, the guy that was doing it, I said, that's a drainage ditch. You shouldn't dig that up. Nope, dug it up. And there's big, huge trees that are on this side of the ditch. And the other side of the ditch was helping hold those trees. And those trees are already leaning because they're on the edge of the ditch. Well, they're gonna eventually fall right on that building because they have no support. But I told him, I said, it's gonna run all down into the building, the mud and everything, so that now they've pushed all the debris back up against the fence. And, you know, I know a lot of money was spent, I get it, but I feel like I should have some kind of, be respectful. You know, I'm disabled, this is all I have. There are people that lived over there 40 and 50 years. And I don't want the laws not to be followed like they're doing at the other place, right? I walk out my door and look at it. My elderly neighbor, she walks out her back door, right on her property line is a fence, but it's a chain link fence. And what does she see? Big semi trucks sitting right there on the property line. Those laws are not being followed, and because she doesn't have the money or anything to get them to stay back, and they're in between train track and her, it's just ridiculous. And that's a lot of the problem, that the laws aren't being followed over there, and we feel like they're not gonna be followed behind us. So, I don't know, it's a lot. I don't know if there's anything else I had to say, but, just if y'all could find out the boundaries for me, since they're coming right up on me, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak against this rezoning request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor?
Move to close.
Motion and a second to close public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, public hearing is closed. Do we have a new motion?
Make a motion to approve with the conditions 1 and 3, but I'd like to make a change to condition 2, and that would be that we require a type D buffer there, which would be the largest buffer with fencing.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Ms. Sharp, I know this is my district, so I'll speak first on this one. I usually let others speak, but I know that we had a conversation about this. This is one of those difficult ones where be careful what you ask for, because if you're left with what the owner currently is zoned to do, it may be something worse, and you may not have the buffer protections that are provided in these conditions. Also wanted to, it's not an engagement, but I'll follow back up with you. We've talked many times. What I would like to know, one last question, Jonathan, do you know if the applicant had any meetings with the nearby residents at all?
I do not know if they did or not.
Okay. So typically, and I just want folks to understand the process, there are 3 readings to this. This is the very first one. There have to be 2 more readings by council before this would even be approved. This is one that I'm taking very seriously. I'm concerned about it. I think that there needs to be a meeting between the applicant and the residents to take a look at what's going on. Probably need to get some feedback, and I think we should be having a little bit more communication with the city of Rock Hill to determine what are they planning to do, because I think that's just something we owe the community since it's a donut hole. That said, that's something that I will certainly do as the representative of the folks in this district, just to follow up on these items, but I do think that these conditions are helpful in protecting that while we continue to figure out what's going on and what's planned there. Any other comments?
Yes, I was just gonna make the comment. I know the resident asked about future plans, what Rock Hill would do. I would just say, we have no idea what Rock Hill would do in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, or 10 years. We could do what we're gonna do up here tonight, and 5 years later, they may annex it. But I'll say one thing, and I'll go on the record of saying this. Since this is county property right now, this council will do all it can to protect the surrounding neighbors and neighborhood. And I know we've had some lapses over the years of some residents, some neighbors not feeling like we were enforcing our rules, our codes. We're working on that. We have some instances across the county that one area gets a lot more enforcement than other areas, and it should be the same across the board. And I'll assure you that we're working on that right now.
I'd just like to add one thing, and that would be a request for if that property that she thinks may not be conforming or following the rules, if we could look into that and check that out for her as well.
Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We move now to our old business. Council to consider a 3rd reading of an ordinance to adopt a 5-year update to York Forward, the York County Comprehensive Plan, including amendments to the future land use plan map, all plan elements and appendices pursuant to the South Carolina Local Government Comprehensive Planning Enabling Act of 1994, to hold a public hearing and to provide for other matters related thereto. Do we have a motion?
We do, and I didn't know my 15 minutes of fame was going to be in a
Pull your
motion,
mic up.
So I'm going to make a motion to approve with the following. just to incorporate these changes. I'm going to read the official sentence here so that it's exactly right. I move to approve third reading to adopt the comprehensive plan update with the following changes to the future land use map, which are depicted and enumerated as follows in Exhibit B. Do we have Exhibit B? Okay, it's in our folders, okay. 1, to change an area west of the urban services boundary, west of York, to the agricultural future land use designation. 2, to change an area south of York in the vicinity of Old Pinckney Road to the agricultural future land use designation. 3, to change an area east of Anderson Road and north of McAllister Road to the rural residential future land use designation. 4, to change an area in the vicinity of Highway 49 and Shiloh Road to the agricultural future land use designation. 5, to change a small area near the intersection of Alexander Love Highway and Old York Road to the single-family residential future land use designation. 6, to change an area along Park Place Road to the rural residential future land use designation. 7, to change an area between the Highway 55 and Lawrence Road to the agricultural future land use designation. 8, to change an area at the intersection of Highway 55 and Beamguard Road to the agricultural future land use designation. 9, to change an area bounded by Parham Road, Highway 55, Kingsbury Road, and W.H. Stowe Road to the agricultural future land use designation. And 10, to change an area at the intersection of Glen Road and Ridge Road to the agricultural future land use designation. I want to clarify for those of you here concerned about the industrial use in District 5, number 3 addressed that for you tonight. Also want to just mention that this is the
Still need the motion.
Oh.
Get the motion first.
Motion, okay.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Now we can discuss it.
Okay, so I'm going to repeat that one more time for those in the back. Okay, so the concern that you had tonight, if you're from the Catawba area, about the industrial use there, this has been resolved for you tonight. The other thing is that Representative Atkins and our Chairwoman Cox and I are really the only three that had changes, things that we wanted to, not proposed changes, but things that we wanted to not change. So I think you can look at this and you can look at the old proposed map and the new map and see that we are going a little more green in York County. We have changed a lot of things back to agricultural because we think that's what you want to see more of. So, and we do too.
Any other discussion? Mr. Roddy?
I'll just make a comment. I'll say that each council member met with staff to look over its comp plan for its area. So I had a chance to look at what I think should be the future. It's not the Bible, it's not the scripture, it's just what we think. And remember, things change. This comp plan is not written in stone. It's gonna be a fluid document that may change or may not change. I see tonight we even mentioned how the rezone that we just did for the truck care center doesn't actually fit the comp plan. So there's gonna be some times that things get adjusted and we put conditions on it to try to still give an opportunity to a business or a resident and take into account putting some conditions in to try to make it work for everybody. You know, it's not a one size fit all, but this is just, a comp plan it's like a budget. You go through it and you try to stick with it. Some things are gonna change. So I just don't want people to walk away thinking that, well, I'll never get to rezone my property or I will get to do it. It may change, even though your property may look one shade of color, and if you wanted another shade, doesn't mean that we can't do it. It's just, this is what this council or your representative sees for the future. And this thing goes out to 2035, I think. But we're required by law, I think it's every 5 years to update on what's the changes that's coming to the area. So just wanted to let people know, this is why we're updating. It wasn't CSX contacted this council to say, we're looking for this. It wasn't someone in my district that says rezone, or I want this property to be this zoning. So we do this periodically. It's not initiated by any one particular company that says they're wanting to come to the area. It just so happens some companies do come in between these updates, but this is not driven by any individual or any company. This is something that we do every 5 years of updating. So just wanted to let everybody know that's how this works.
Any other Mr. Audette?
Yeah. I want to say thank you to everybody involved here and for your participation and your feedback that you gave us as we went through that. I mean, this was critical to hear what your needs and concerns were. You know, at the end of the day, this allows us to work united across the board to understand the concerns of the community and then to start applying that to our policies. And I just want to thank you all for your feedback and participation in this process. I thank you for that. The next thing that I want to mention too, you know, outside of this planning, I mean, last year we did a lot of zoning realignment and changes. One of the changes we made actually that really helped my district and Debbie's district across the board and all the districts across the county was the impact that we are starting to see of high density apartments and townhomes in our area. Well, last year we addressed that by, in the code, there was actually 3 codes that would allow townhomes or apartments coming into our community. Well, with the changes and the collaboration across the council here, we eliminated and brought it down to just 1 code. And that 1 code, there's actually not one piece of property now in York County that actually qualifies under that 1 code. So any townhome or any apartment would have to come through the council for us to approve. So that strengthened because we saw the impact of rapid growth in our schools. And again, it's about hearing what the public says and coming back with sound policy. So I wanted to share that with y'all. Thank you.
Quick comment.
Mr. Huckabee.
So I represent District 6, and I guess fortunately there were no changes proposed in District 6. I wanted you to know that. But secondly, I think what you're going to hear from council, I hope what you're going to hear from council over the next year is a conversation about preserving farmland and green space, agriculture. So I look forward to hearing a little more discussion on that topic.
Any other comments?
I put it back green. All they got to do is plant gardens.
Anything, Debbie? You good?
Well, I'm just very fortunate to have Ann Springs Greenway right in the middle of my district, and a lot of fine folks that came out tonight. And we have some issues, but we also have a lot of good things in District 1, and I'm very proud to represent that district.
Yes, ma'am. I'll just end with this. I think what's happened here tonight is that the folks up here have listened to the people and what they want to see and how they want to see their communities grow, and it gives additional protections to the council to evaluate things that come forward. You know, maybe something is good there that would bring jobs, but we need to make sure that we have the control and to make sure that the vision matches the community and allow our communities to grow and thrive, all of them, everywhere, the best they can. Every square inch of this county matters to this council. And I can tell you, I think that this council is evaluating those things very seriously and very much listening to you. I ask that you don't give up on government, that you allow the folks who represent you to do what they need to do. I will say this, it is extremely important that you come to these meetings and that you stay plugged in and that you share your comments. It is critical. It is important that we hear from you, and I'm thankful that you came out here and that you came out tonight. Any questions about that, you can reach out to me for the changes that were in our district. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We move now to item number 2 of old business, rezoning action. Consider second reading, case number 22-47, tax map number 446000065, a portion to rezone from GC to RMX 10.68 acres in District 3. Do we have a motion?
Motion to deny.
We have a motion and a second to deny. Any discussion?
Yes. Go ahead. Go ahead, Bob.
This is the part that sits out in front of McAfee Court, right?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
And so basically what we're saying, if we're denying this, we're actually denying this entire project. Is that the goal? Is that the outcome we're going for?
Yeah, that would be the case. This is the parcel out on Highway 5 that allows them to have the turn lane.
The high
Because-
density zone.
Yeah, because without this, we can't move forward with the next items. Well, I'll just say, I know we worked on this, for quite a while. We sent this developer back to the planning commission with a tall order to fill of redoing the comp plan. And I knew at that point, when we sent this item back to the planning commission, to have the planning commission rework the comp plan. I told this developer, they're sending this plan back to kill it. Instead of having the gumption to say no 7 months ago, we sent this guy to spend time, money, working on something that this council should have had the wherewithal to stand up and say no when it was time to do it. I visited that site. I believe in the plan that he put forward. We heard neighbors come out and speak for it. We heard neighbors come out and speak against it. But it boils down to, are you satisfied with what you got now versus what could be with changing things? And apparently, what's at McAfee Court, what our sheriff department has to deal with, what those residents have to deal with, some people are saying they're fine with that. I'm not. I'm not satisfied because the living conditions over there are not what we should be even allowing in York County. You know, the same thing that we do to protect some of our higher end areas, some of our higher end neighborhoods. Here's a neighborhood that's asking us to help them out. Here's a neighborhood that's come to this chamber and laid their hearts on the line for wanting something better, for wanting this council to support something better. And this council has basically kicked the can down the road, and now we're telling them no. But we're saying yes to everything that goes on up in that subdivision, and that right now it's a trailer park. What's being proposed is a manufactured home community. And I can't see for the life of me why anybody who's driven up in there and saw the living conditions would say yes to that and no to a plan to make it better. We give everybody an opportunity to do better. We want people to do better. But we're telling the people that live in McAfee Court today that you don't deserve better. You don't deserve a better opportunity to live in decent housing, decent communities, with decent roads, with decent running water and sewer. That's what a no vote says right now to that entire community. 155 acres. We've seen developers come in and get rezoned for 200 acres, bring 300-400 homes, sell them for $500,000 better. But here's a community that's probably living below the average income in York County, and we've talked about affordable housing on this council. For the last 12 years, we've dabbled with affordable housing. Here's someone who's gonna offer something a little more affordable than a $500,000 house, and we saying no. It's too many. Well, it's not too many when you go up 274. It's not too many when you come right down to Rock Hill, where you get 200 homes in a neighborhood, 300 homes in a neighborhood, and they're selling like hotcakes for $500,000, $300,000-$400,000. But here's a developer that says, I have a plan that will address affordable housing in York County that could possibly be 150 or lower. Some people on this council raised the question, well, how much is this developer gonna make? Well, we didn't ask how much the guy was gonna make when he sells a $500,000 home. I think we're getting too far down in the weeds when we're concerned about what somebody's gonna make versus the better situation we're gonna provide for someone living in a better home situation. I think this council, we're getting it wrong. We're getting it wrong. We're telling people that's living here or outside of here, if you can't afford a $500,000 house, don't bother looking in York County. That's what this right here is saying, and we talked about it every single year. But when come time when the rubber meets the road for affordable housing, something that's more affordable, we're saying no. So I think it's all just political rhetoric when we say we want affordable housing or we care about those who are a little less on the totem pole. We're saying no to you tonight and anybody that votes no for this and not allowing this to move forward, they're saying no to you. Whether you make a job, whether you work on a job that's paying $17 an hour or $25 an hour. I hate it for this community because I believe in the plan that was put forth, and it was not going to be a easy order to fill. So my heart goes out to everybody in that community, and I'm going to vote yes, even though it's not going to pass, because I want the people of that community to know that I supported this plan going forward because I understand the fight of being able to afford a $500,000 home. I understand the fight of owning a $300,000 home. There are not any houses on this market where anyone can go out and find 20, 30 houses under $150,000. You cannot find it in York County. So we're saying no to someone who's looking to bring affordability, sustainability. So I'm just disappointed that we're going down this road because we're saying no tonight to something that I think will improve the lives of some people who so desperately need improvement. And I can go on and on and on and talking about it. So I hope every one of us that goes home tonight who has running water, paved roads, curb and gutter, a roof over our heads, and I can assure you, nobody up here lives in a house under $200,000, $300,000. Well, but it's on the lake. So that's where we're at. And our job is not just to take care of those at the top of the chain. It's to take care of those from the bottom up. So, and I can preach and go on, but that's where we're at. That's the challenge of sitting in these seats, is how do we have the wherewithal to care about the people that's down a little bit lower than us, who needs a hand up, not a handout. And this would have been a hand up to some people that live in that community. And I'm finished.
Yes, Ms. Love. She had already raised her hand.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Councilman Roddy and I, we're not always going to agree. But I want to give you a different interpretation of what I think has happened here. I think, first of all, we have people who've been living in horrible conditions for a very long time. This neighborhood didn't get like this over the last year, 2 years, or 3 years. This has been a growing problem. And I do care about those of you who go home to that neighborhood. I care about you, and I care about your children. And don't shake your head no at me, because I do. And in the long run, you're going to see. This is what you're going to see. If that had been a small development that was being proposed, then the developer could go in and he could fix things for you at a very low cost. But this developer has a $2.5 million upfront cost. That adds to what you're ultimately going to pay. And I don't believe that what you're ultimately going to pay is going to be as affordable as you've been led to believe. He could go somewhere else, buy a property without the $2.5 million, develop it. You've got to stay where you are for another year or year and a half before you can move, because he's not starting where the problems are. So you're going to stay there for another year to year and a half in your drug-ridden neighborhood, okay, and wait for him to build something for you to potentially go out, buy a home and move into. He could go somewhere without that upfront cost, build it, and you could still move there at a lower price, because you're not going to incur a $2.5 million cost. I mean, we're talking, this is a business decision for him. You are part of it. You're the fallout from what he's proposing, in a way, because why not go somewhere else? And I had a 2-hour conversation with him. I met with him and listened and told him what I thought. And it's awkward to tell somebody what you think about their business decision, but why spend $2.5 million on something? And because you're going to pay for that. He's got to make that up somewhere. He's a businessman. And I just it's very concerning to me, because it changes the landscape of that area. It changes the landscape from where you are all the way to the edge of the city of York. And the high density is already, listen, we're already looking at the high density that the city of York has approved. So I just think we have to respect everybody, not just those of you who are living like this. I mean, I would like nothing more than to help. I don't believe in my heart that this outcome is what you feel in your heart that it's going to be. And that bothers me so much that you know, because I do care about affordable housing. Everybody should be able to have a place to live. It doesn't mean that everybody will ever be able to afford their own home. Not everybody is ever going to be able to afford that. But you need an upgrade. And the fact that the county can go out there and issue violations and enforce those violations in the short term, hopefully that, I think that's what helps you. That's what should have been done a long time ago. The fact that this person can build 1,200, once we approve him fixing what you've got, he can put 1,200 more there. And that's the problem that I have with it.
I think it was Watts.
Thank you.
Mr. Huckabee.
Thank you. So I'm new to council, and this issue actually originated long before I joined council, long before Mr. Adkins and Mrs. Cloninger too. So I want to share with you a couple of things. Number one, being a council member is a huge commitment, and it's not easy. It's difficult. These things that we have to make decisions on, they're difficult decisions. I went out and visited the site. It's not in my district. It's in Mr. Adkins' district, but I went out and visited the site with Mr. Adkins and Mrs. Cloninger. And I did that because if I'm going to make a decision on something, I need to understand what I'm making a decision on, right? It's very uncomfortable when you're asked to vote on something and you really don't have an opinion on it. And I want to say that last Friday I had a chance, because I'm taking the time to go sit down with each council member to get to know them. I had the chance to sit down with Bump Ridey, and I've known Bump pretty much all my life. And I told Bump that this is an example today of the respect that I have for him. Number one, for serving for 12 years, but number two, to say everything he said a minute ago. That's not easy to say all that publicly when other people you're sitting with may feel differently. So I want to applaud him for doing that. But I want to share some notes with you that I took. I took notes while we were out there. I went back and validated my notes with Mr. G. And then I sent my notes on to Debbie and Tommy so they could give me feedback on the notes as well. So I'm going to take a few minutes and I want to share this because I think it's important. So the owner of the property is looking to sell a 10-acre parcel of land and a 145-acre parcel of land. The 10-acre parcel of land right now serves as a mobile home manufactured home community. It's 10 acres. Those 10 acres can accommodate 68 mobile homes. Currently, there are 25-ish on the property. You'd have to go ride through the property, as Mr. Roddy shared, to form your opinion on what the property's like. But it definitely needs improvements. There's no doubt about that. If this property sells, by code, there could be 6.5 units per acre. The developer has agreed to 2.5 units per acre and has agreed to put this in writing that is what he would do. So he'd have a deed restriction, I guess is what you'd refer to that as, a deed restriction, Jonathan? I'm not speaking for him, but this is what, right?
That would be the preferred route, yes.
Yeah, so he's willing to put an exception in the language to say that it would only be 2.5 acres. So he's looking at 388 manufactured homes. Now, at some point, I believe it's critically important for York County to talk about affordable housing. And let's talk about that just for 1 minute. I've lived in Rock Hill and York County all my life. Now I want to go back and talk about the 2008 recession for a second. The 2008 recession saw property values in the Rock Hill area drop. All of us that lived in Rock Hill, the Rock Hill area, or even in York County dropped, except for Fort Mill. Back in 2008, if you owned a piece of property in Fort Mill, and I did, the property value really didn't drop. It held, okay? So Fort Mill was a lot like Charlotte, Greenville, Atlanta, Charleston. Property values didn't change. Today, in 2023, assuming you believe we're in a recession, I believe we are. I don't know where we're heading in this recession because it's different than the last recession. But what I do believe is this. I believe that property values are here to stay somewhat. I don't see them changing like they did in 2008 in York County. I believe Rock Hill and other areas, York is soon to be on that track, is in the same situation Fort Mill was in back in 2008. So I don't see property values dropping, and I don't see rent dropping. So what does that mean? And this is just my opinion. I'm not an economist, but I am 56 years old, and I've lived through a number of recessions, and I've owned a business for 32 years, and I think I've got a valid opinion. I don't see it changing here in York County, which means that affordable housing is a very important topic that we need to discuss here in York County. And I can't tell you why I believe it's 9 municipalities we have, including McConnell's, that hasn't tackled this issue of affordable housing, but I think it's an important discussion for us to have. And I think that discussion has multiple legs. And one of those legs is this project that we're talking about at McAfee Court. Why? Because this project, based on what's been shared with me, and I wish you could see a visual, and if not, regardless of how this vote goes, go home tonight and Google manufactured homes today. Because the manufactured homes today are not the manufactured homes you have in your mind probably, or I had in mind before I went out to the property and then went and did my own research. So if you could picture a development that looks like a regular home development, right? It's different. And so what this gentleman and his family's looking to do is to put a development together where you could purchase what we would call a double wide, single wide, and believe me, they don't look like the ones that are there now or the ones you think about now, that range somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000. Now, some people are going to have heartburn over them not owning the land. Okay? Well, the land, and I think this is important for you to share and other council members to know this if you don't know this. What they're doing is they're going to lease the land to the tenant between $300 and $400 a month. And that's going to include trash service, water and sewer. They'll have to pay for their power, landscaping, upkeep of the common areas to maintain the aesthetics of the area. Okay? This doesn't even include the infrastructure improvements that they're doing, which is correcting, I think, 2 lagoons. We had someone come in at one of our meetings recently. I wish I'd written down the number, but I think he said to revitalize those lagoons would cost, I don't know, I think he said $4 million. It was a lot. Anyway, the fee, $350, $400 a month, is what they would pay, right? And then they would pay their mortgage payment on their single wide, double wide. Now think about this. For most people, you go out and you buy somewhere to live, you got to pay for the land and you got to pay for the improvement. In this case, you don't have to go borrow for the land and the improvement. You're going to go borrow for the improvement, the double wide, single wide, whatever you're going to live in, right? You're not having to go borrow money for the land, which makes this a more affordable, convenient way to purchase a piece of property. And the reading that I've done, I see more of this happening in other areas around the United States. It's one of those legs of the stool of trying to deliver affordable housing to the citizens of the area that you're in, because we don't have much affordable housing left here. His plan, from what is shared with me, is it's a phased approach, and some of that has to do with the York School District, but it's a phased approach. And the first phase of the project is, yes, he would go over the new land and begin the development. But the new units that go in, the 25 people or so that live in the current, they get first rights of refusal to purchase, and I think even lease. A leasing component is in his proposal, I think is what he had agreed to do. So there's a purchase and a lease, right? So they have 2 options. So they are protected. The ones that live there now are protected, that they have first rights of refusal on the first units that go in. A couple more things. 30% more green space than the county ordinance requires. It's going to have a dog park, multiple interior bus stops. So right now there are 6 stops a day out on Highway 5. If you've never been out there, I mean, I wouldn't want my child really getting off of a bus at that turn in the road, right? So you're not going to have those. So all the bus stops come interior now and have 2 official bus stops in the neighborhood. Clubhouse, playground, picnic, shelter, and grills, 1 mile of unpaved natural trails. Listen, I'm not sharing this because I'm just sharing the facts with you, what was shared with me, okay? Because I want you to be as informed as I am informed on this, and as Councilman Roddy is. There are going to be 3 retention ponds, and then all the roads are internal roads that will be privately owned and maintained, so that wouldn't be the responsibility of the county either. It's a huge investment, and I got to say, if I lived in the area, and I don't, I may struggle with this too. 155 acres being redeveloped with 388 structures on it. But, you know, at some point, I think we're going to have to bite the bullet and initiate some creative home purchases that are affordable, and I believe this is one of them. Thank you.
Okay, when this project came up, I was very surprised because it was, I was on Planning Commission, came before us, and I do want to let council know, sometimes you don't get this perspective of why the Planning Commission denied it. And we denied it because a lot of the things that now I'm hearing on council, I did not hear that night. We heard a high-density mobile home park. That's what we heard. We never heard one word about affordable housing. That was never mentioned, ever. And the other thing was we had a report from the school that said, please, this is not acceptable. We do not have the room to put these kids. Then we looked at, we didn't really have a traffic impact study, but we had some information that we got from the planning department about that, and it was unanimous. We unanimously voted this was excessive for this part of the county because it's not part of the comprehensive plan, and the fact that here's what was said about the mobile homes that were currently there. The only thing we knew about it, and I'm very sorry that I did not go out at that time, that was last year. There's a few mobile homes there, but don't worry about them. That's all we ever heard about you. And that is a crying shame. It is a crying shame. And I'm telling you right now, and I hope you believe me, that I'm very passionate about doing the right thing for not only my constituents, but for everybody. And I would have said a few more choice words that night if I had gone prior to him presenting to the Planning Commission, because you were not even thought about. You were not even given any thoughts. When we were there at that meeting, Watts and Tommy, I got the impression, I was concerned about you guys. I said, what's going to happen with these folks during the building phase? And I didn't really get a clear answer on that. It's now being stated more, oh, it's going to be okay. They're going to be okay. We're going to take care of them first. Now I'm hearing that. I did not hear that then. So I just, and again I say, affordable housing was never mentioned, and yes, this is something that, you know, is needed. We have teachers, we have police officers that can't afford to live here. So I don't know what the answer is, but I'm telling you that this man never said any word, never, not one word came out of his mouth. Now, we told him that we didn't want to shut him down, even though we were denying it. And we asked him to come back with a new plan that was more reasonable. and we gave him a number around 150. We thought 400 was excessive. So that's what happened with Planning Commission.
Mr. Audette?
Yeah, thank you. So this, looking at this thing, I look back in what I did, and I did years ago. As you look back at the different jobs that you did, you learn from that track. And one of the things that I used to do was I used to sell modular homes. I used to sell mobile homes. I'd sell them in mobile home parks. I'd sell them to people that own their own property. And it was great. It was a great way to get into something that was affordable. But when I say affordable, I'm speaking of a single wide, a regular mobile home, and it was very affordable at the time. But even as affordable as it was at the time, a lot of the sales that I had were because of the fact that none of them owned their land, okay? And they're all in lease. They had multiple situations come up because of the interest rate they would have to pay for, because they weren't putting it on their own property. Interest rate they had to pay for either for the mobile home, for the module home, was much higher, okay? So there wasn't much wiggle room. So the lot rent that they were paying, any fluctuation in that lot rent, we end up seeing multiple foreclosures, okay, on these properties. People were losing their credit line, and they were losing their home because they didn't have a piece of property they could pull these mobile homes off and bring them to. So I paused on this immensely to look at the dynamics of how this was structured. And when you start looking at the cost, and majority of them would be double wides or modular homes, and you look at the lot rent, and you look at the interest rate paid, it becomes really not an affordable situation because there is risk involved in that. And when that risk is involved, I've seen people lose their livelihood and not be able to pull their home off, and it was a really tough situation. So the component here that I see from the ideas of affordable housing, to me, if it was strictly just single wides, okay, on a controlled lot rent, it may be something to talk about here, but I'm not going to support that tonight because I see too much risk that the people will be facing because of this situation.
I'm going to talk.
Mr. Adkins.
First of all, both y'all ain't seen what I seen. Y'all still going by his original. I had to talk with him yesterday. I point blank asked him, y'all people that are living there, have you showed this to the people that are staying there? Because it's changed drastically. He's got 4 different ones. Allison even seen a different one. This is not about y'all in affordable housing. It's to get something passed through. And y'all are absolutely wrong because y'all ought to see the one that I've got. Carolyn isn't even in my bag. And you'll see it's not about affordable housing. Now, this already done tick me off because this is my district. And I'm the one that's done heard the hundreds of people calling. I've heard their complaints. Even someone telling me that it was because I own land and I have a house and I worked 30 years for it. And I just urge y'all that are staying in there, make Mr. Gee, make him show y'all what he's got. And you'll see that he was fixing to push y'all under the bus. Because he was going to put nothing but double wides in there, and the heck with it, whatever may it go. And I am not for high density anywhere in this county. I'm sick of it. I'm farm background. I'm original from here. I'm sick of the houses piling in and seeing all the farms leave. Dang, we won't live like we used to live. We don't change because other people come in here. They changed what we are. I'm tired of it, and that's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins. I think one time through is probably good.
I need to make this comment because something
true.
was directed towards me. And I'm not even going to address, this is not about any personal council members. But when you hear people concerned about land being leased, every shopping center in America is leased on leased land. Developers and builders don't build buildings and sell the land. The Galleria was on leased land. Harris Teeter's on leased land. Food Lion's on leased land. So let's don't say we're concerned about the business aspect of this and concerned about the interest rates that someone would pay in this agreement. We have never asked a builder or developer, are you buying your land outright or did you finance it? What's your interest rate when you got the deal? We've never got down, that's getting in the weeds. I don't care if he's leasing the land, buying the land. I don't care if it costs $5 million to run a water sewer line. That's his risk. We never should be approving things based on someone else's risk. It's a risk when we buy property, but it shouldn't be a concern of ours whether we're doing a rezoning based on the risk of the applicant and the fees and money that they're spending. I think this is when we get it wrong because we do so many rezonings. We've never asked a builder, how much are you gonna make? We've never asked a developer, are you gonna take care of the surrounding neighborhoods and put them in new homes? Our job is to rezone and use it based on the information that we have. Whether it costs $20 million, if this was a certain family in this York County community, and I don't have to name names, who has all the property, who's never sold it, who's always building and leasing, we would not question what they're gonna make and how much it costs them to run water sewer lines. We all can put our name in the hat and dig it out. We would not question them, but we're questioning someone else and saying that they're gonna put 1,200 homes. Yes, the plan probably has changed because this council has told them over and over again, we don't like this plan. And when we're talking about affordable to me is not affordable to the next person to my right or to my left. This plan is more affordable than some of the going market rates for houses. That's where the affordable housing component comes in.
Mr. Roddy,
there's not a defined,
if we're gonna go through the,
okay, one more
again,
comment.
all right.
There's not a defined method or bracket for affordable housing. So we're saying it's more affordable than the going typical selling rate. That's what makes it affordable.
Quick
So
question, what are we voting on?
The
Because
motion,
we got a motion to deny.
the current motion on the
second.
table is to deny. It has been seconded.
So I want to make sure if we vote yea or nay, please define what we're voting.
We're
on.
voting to deny. If you say yea, you support denial. And we've had everyone speak, and I think we've got plenty of other items on the agenda that we still haven't reached. So I heard the point, and I'll wrap this up. Just because it's a mobile home doesn't make it affordable housing. The first home that my husband and I bought and brought our daughter home to was a single wide home in Lancaster, and we own the land on it. If you don't own the land, you can't get favorable interest rates. You can't ever own it. If you get behind on your payments, you lose it. How are you going to move it so you own an asset and you don't lose it? I'm outraged. I think you should be too, that you're living in the conditions that you are with the violations that exist there. I think it's deplorable. I think they should have to fix that. To have those lagoons there is a problem, and it should be fixed. Those mobile homes, I went there, I went on site, I spoke with some neighbors, I looked at it, I drove down the road, I saw the muddy conditions, I saw the houses split open. But we can't get into the business of rewarding bad behavior by increasing density 3-4 times what's currently allowed there when there was never a guarantee that the people who stay there would have a place to stay. There was never a condition of that I ever saw that was put into that. And that's the problem that I have with this. We have to make decisions based upon the good of the community as a whole. And in this particular case, I support denial. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Nay.
The motion passes with the denial. We still have another one to come around. You can make some more comments. We got one more. Can we do that then? All right, this is tied to this one. Rezoning action, consider second reading. Case number 22-03, 443-00000002. to rezone from RUD to RMX 10, 155 acres in District 3. Do we have a motion?
Deny.
Second.
Motion and a second to deny. Any discussion?
Yep.
Mr. Atkins, you raised your hand at the last, and you made the motion. Would you like to comment?
Well, yeah, I was wondering a lot on this high density why he's want to do it, considering the turn lanes are gonna be out there in the road anyway, and that wasn't but like 29,000 square feet there. But that's not what I want to talk about. I want y'all that live there, make him show you what he was not even told y'all. I talked to him yesterday evening, I seen it. Make him show you what he hadn't showed you. And that's all I can say about it.
Okay. Any other discussion? Mr. Roddy?
I don't know of any other plan outside of the original one that I was showed and worked all the way up until last week, maybe when the plans changed, when I was told that I don't see this moving forward. I'm gonna have to change the plan because I don't think this council is gonna support what I'm doing. And then to hear the speculation that someone wants to put 1,200 homes when it was already said to be put in writing that we always put conditions. We have the authority to put conditions to say, here's the number, here are the conditions, and y'all have heard us prove things and add conditions to them. That goes into the agreement, that goes into the plat, that these things can't be deviated from. And this individual was willing to put those stipulations in. We've heard that density can be up to 6 units per acre. This builder was willing to put it in writing that he was only willing to do 2.5 per acre. That's how density works. If he was going on the normal with manufactured homes or mobile homes, he could have went up to, the typical you see up to about 6 per acre. But he was willing to put it in writing to only do 2 per acre. Now, if it was 30 acres on this a 30-acre parcel, I don't think the heartburn for this community would be so great. But it's virtually impossible to run a water sewer line from the distance it has to come and then tell someone you could only do 100 spots or 150 spots. The math just doesn't add up. And I don't think we're in the business of changing people's business plan. Imagine if someone had changed Microsoft's business plan, or Apple's business plan, or Tesla's business plan. That's not for us to decide. What we were deciding tonight was, do we want to support an effort to bring housing that's more affordable to York County? It was never pitched, it was never titled Affordable Housing Plan. But when you look at the cost, what it costs to live in York, South Carolina, what it costs to live in Lake Wiley, Meadow Lakes in Rock Hill, anywhere in Rock Hill, this is more affordable than those areas anywhere in this county. And that was what we were going for, or that's what he was going for when he pitched it to me. This is not my district, but I was on council prior to Mr. Atkins taking seat. I know more about it from then to now, and it was a lot to ask Councilman Atkins to stomach this, to walk in off the street and know all the ins and outs. It's a very difficult job to come sit up here and things are already going on and you jump in and you have to start rowing with the rest of the team to find out what's going on. So it's a tall order to fill, but to think that we can continue to think that just because the big number is not the right thing to do, sometimes the big number is the right thing to do because it makes it a lot more affordable. I can only imagine what the lot rent would cost if there was only 100 spots and it cost you $2.5 million to run a water sewer line to 100 parcels to get water and sewer from it. That's not our fight. That's not what we're charged with doing. That's out of our purview to get into people's business plans. If he was given an opportunity to do it and it failed, that's his dollar. That's his dime. Because businesses and opportunities do fail. But that's not what we were up here to decide, a successful business plan or business model. But I just again, I'll say it to the residents, and this individual doesn't own this property right now. He has an option to purchase it. So he's not under any obligation to fix any violation that's currently going on. And I hope our staff is willing to go out and make sure that any violation that's currently going on, that the current property owner is made to adhere to what we've said we want the standards to be for living conditions, road conditions, water conditions. We need to hold the current owner to those, not the individual who says, I recognize this is a horrible situation and I want to do something about it. Because after tonight, he doesn't have any more involvement unless he wants that property that bad. And I can't see him taking that property, taking ownership, and not being able to execute his business plan. Because if it was a plan that we had to give him, we can't tell anybody how to spend their money. That's not what we're up here to do. So my heart goes out to these neighbors. I've been in touch with them since probably June or July last year. So I know what's been going on. I ride by there every day. If I'm coming to York, if I'm going over to 85 to go to work sometimes, my heart goes out to that community, and I wish there was more that I could have done to get this to go through, to give you guys a better opportunity to have something more sustainable.
4 quick
Mr. Huckabee.
comments. Yes, ma'am. Just to follow up. So after we went over and visited the property in January, I sent an email out, and point number 4 in the email talked about first rights of refusal. So that was part of the notes that I took from that day, and the follow-up notes that I got from Mr. G after we toured the property. I did not mention in my notes that I have here that they are looking to get a license to sell manufactured homes to reduce the purchase cost for the consumer. So that was something I left out. I apologize for that. They talked about whether, I don't know whether this still stands or not, but a buyback provision. So if somebody did foreclose, there would be a buyback provision in their agreement. And then the last thing is the rendering maybe that you saw, which I think is pretty impressive. It has possibly a couple of what look like homes on the front, and then it goes double wide, single wide in the back. So that's the rendering that I've seen, and I think that was the expectation.
He's
But the
got
bottom,
4 different drawings.
yeah. So anyway, it's double wides and single wides is what you have.
Reduce the
Thank you.
density to
Mr. Atkins.
288.
Ms. Love?
So I think we're back into the business model. When you start talking about that he's got a buyback plan and what the cost of the lot's gonna be and where the mobile homes might come from, we're back into the weeds on the business plan. So, and I agree with Councilman Roddy that it's not up to us to determine that business plan. The issue that we have, I've just said, we took our comprehensive plan and we went back to lower density throughout York County. So Councilman Atkins is 100% right about what he wants to do in his district. His people want him to have lower density. We should not have to add 340 mobile homes to what you have to make your living conditions better, period. That's it. We should not have to do that.
I almost feel like I have to comment just quickly. As a council member, I'm devoting 60-plus hours a month to doing what's best for council, and I'm trying to make decisions that are in the best interest of York County, not for District 6, or not any other of the 7 districts represented here. And so I just would ask the same for everybody else, too, consistently across the board when we discuss any topics.
Any other comments? I'll just reiterate my previous points. The idea that this is affordable housing, I think, is completely inconsistent with everything that I've seen on this plan. I've never seen any conditions or any provisions that allowed or that protected any of the existing property owners or gave them first right to stay there. I never saw a condition, not a single condition, that guaranteed that any of the lots or any of the homes had to meet HUD affordable housing standards. I don't think this is affordable housing. This is a situation of, do you go in and increase the density that's currently allowed? And I will say this, based upon the information that's been provided to us from staff, Ms. Roddy, on that question, is that if you do rezone it to a particular zoning classification, council does not have the flexibility to, unless it is deed restricted, that property owner is allowed to build as much as that zoning classification allows, the way that it is. And that's part of the problem here, is that there needs to be some flexibility in the zoning classification so that we can protect folks.
He's agreed to a deed restriction.
I've never
2.5.
seen any proposals or any numbers. Yep. Well, no, I've met with the property owners, went on site, and Mr. Adkins, who's the district representative, I know that he's met with folks on countless times and shared information with me through that as well. I've seen the proposal. All those in favor of denial say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We move now to rezoning. Consider second reading, case number 21-02, tax map 555-00000044, to rezone from RSF 30 to NC 1.93 acres in District 2.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Roddy?
I was looking around to see if the applicant was here. I know this came up last year, and I know there's been some ongoing conversation to try to work something out with him and some of the neighbors to try to see what alternatives would be available. I haven't heard from Mr. Brown as to any alternative plans that he's been working on or secured. I know when we originally brought this up, our chamber was packed with people from that Clover Lake Wiley area about how much this rec opportunity meant to Clover, Lake Wiley, everybody from, even people from Rock Hill travel to participate at this location. So I just hate we haven't heard back of any updated plans of this location or even a future location. So without hearing from Mr. Brown as to any other options that he have, I just hate, if we vote to deny this, are we going out to shut this operation down this week, next month? How is this gonna work?
I'm sorry, are you ready?
Oh, I see it's second reading, but if we turn it down tonight, when are we going, what's the plan, what's staff's plan to transition this business out of business? Or is it, we give them 30 days, we give them 6 weeks, we give them 6 months? What's kind of
The property is in violation, and we have stayed that during this process. So what if the proposal is voted down, then they would be considered to be under violation, and we begin the enforcement process. Jonathan, any thoughts on how long that might take?
We would essentially start from square one, so they would receive a new notice of violation to give them time to correct the violations, knowing that the rezoning is now not among the list of remedies. And there are some structures that are involved that are part of the violation, and we understand that takes more than the standard 15 days to correct that. So there are some things that we can work with the applicant on for timeline-wise, but we would look to see some applications from them, whether it's a variance for setback location or removal of the buildings, probably inside of 30 days, just to see that they've started that process to correct the site.
So this is District 2, and it's been, I think, Jonathan, it's been almost a year, is it a year, that we have not done any enforcement on this because Mr. Brown was looking at a new property. We allowed him to go through all of the processes with the city of Rock Hill to get those approved. We know that he was approved for what he wanted to do on that site, and I have stayed in communication with him throughout this process. And a couple of months ago, well, not a couple months ago, I'm sorry, at our last agenda meeting, before our last agenda meeting, I reached out to him, and prior to the agenda meeting last week, so 2 agenda meetings, so we're a month out now, I've left him multiple messages and sent him multiple texts on 2 different numbers, and he has not responded back to me. So I've put up some time and effort into helping him and trying to figure out where else he could go. I've contacted some people, and there were some other options that he didn't take advantage of. So at this point, I think we've allowed a lot longer than we would allow most people to be in multiple violations. So we are, my goal is to deny, and if we hear from him between now and 3rd reading, that would be nice. That would be nice too.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Hearing none, motion carries. I'm sorry. Motion passes 6-1. All right, where are we? Moved out to new business. Item number 1, York County Code of Ordinances 153.57B requires an annual report on impact fees at the first council meeting in March. The impact fee report provides council with all the information required by ordinance as well as summary data for impact fee collection in 2022.
Yes, Madam Chair, the ordinance requires certain items to be listed out in an annual report to council. So the items of interest that's in the packet in finding A, it's talking about the ordinance amendment that council passed in December of last year that clarified some language on amending capital improvement plans as it relates to the school impact fees. Letter B describes the ordinance that you passed also in December on amending the capital improvement plan for Fort Mill School District for their impact fee. There were no other proposed changes from an administrative level, although in letter D there is a reminder there that the Planning Commission should be conducting a review of the impact fee schedule for the Fort Mill School District in the 2023 calendar year. And then in item G, that's some of the math. They're totaling the dollars and units for all of the impact fees that were collected in calendar year 2022. And just on a very high level, the Fort Mill School District impact fee collected $10.4 million, and the Clover School District fee collected $1.7 million. And I'll just add that there are 2 Scrivener's errors that we ask that you amend in accepting the information. The title is March 2022, and while it's the 22 information, the calendar year is 23 now. So this is the March 2023 report. And then in item B, the ordinance number was left with a placeholder, and that ordinance number is 6822.
Changes are noted. Is there any action that's being requested of management or just to deliver a report?
It's just delivering a report.
Okay. Any questions from council? All right, we move now to number 2, item of new business. Council to approve first reading of an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a fee in lieu of tax and incentive agreement by and between York County, South Carolina, the county, and a company identified for the time being as Project Mountie with respect to certain property, including without limitation economic development property in the county, whereby such property will be subject to certain payments in lieu of ad valorem taxes and other matters related thereto. Do we have a motion?
Have a motion to move into executive session to discuss Project Mountie.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Who said no? For executive session? I'm sorry?
You could, if it want to go into executive session, we're near the end of the agenda. It could be added to the motion to executive session and reserve voting on this after emerging from executive session as an option.
Yes.
The motion has been made to at least hear from legal. Is there for or against that? I want to make sure I'm understanding that.
Well, we can move this item to.
He's talking about moving the action item behind our executive session.
We can either do it now or move this item to after executive session.
You don't want to go ahead and do that? We have people here listening. I mean, if we break for executive session now, that gives the opportunity for the people who are here not to have to wait for the other 2 items.
Well, we can go ahead and do it.
Legal's saying move this item to our executive session because we're about to go into executive session. Is that correct?
That is what I said, but to the chair's point, if you want to go into executive session now, you can. I was just thinking of economy of meeting, but that's fine.
I'd be glad to amend mine so that we discuss this when we go into executive session anyway.
I know, but are we going to defer this till after? Are we going to make a motion to suspend the rule? Why don't we just go into executive session?
I mean, I think we need to go to.
Right. If we go into executive session now, I'm just trying, since we're still in discussion mode, the item that's on the table, really the last one that really has much of anything that the public is here to listen to, we would be saving them time to go have that discussion now, then come out and take up the action item.
I think we should go to
So
executive session now.
I would suggest that we,
Why are we opposing executive session? To hear about this? Let's go.
well, motion on the table is to go into executive session. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
We need you to vote. We need an audible. We're going to, this is not a approval or denial of anything. This is go into executive session and handle this, hear this discussion now. Are you voting yes for executive session?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
4-3.
We'll go into executive session. We're out of executive session. No action was taken. Do we have a motion?
Motion to move for a first reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve first reading only. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries 5-2. We move now to one thing I do want to say. This is one of those things, just like in my district before, there are 3 readings. All right? This is the first reading, gathering information. That's what we need to do in order to protect the citizens in our county and in order for folks to gather information. I would ask that you just remember that in terms of the process and how we move forward. We move now to number 1 in consent that was deferred, or that was taken out of consent agenda, minutes of Finance and Operations Committee, February 20th, 2023. Ms. Love.
Yes. So I just wanted to correct one thing that was in the minutes. So I'll read this. This is what it currently says. Motion was made by Councilmember Tom Audette and seconded by Councilmember Tommy Atkins to approve the modifications with a full report back to council at the council retreat or an upcoming council workshop of a monitoring structure with checks and balances. Prior to third reading, motion carried. There are a couple things that are incorrect in this. Motion was made by Councilmember Tom Audette and seconded by Councilmember Allison Love to approve the modifications, and the report back to council at a retreat or upcoming workshop was not a part of that. As a matter of fact, in the council meeting following that vote, I said that we made a motion to approve, and Councilman Audette added to that. The rest of what we did is we voted to approve with a way of monitoring those employees who might be working from home. And this miswording has kept this from being on tonight's agenda, so this needs to be on our next council agenda.
Okay, so the motion is to amend the Finance and Operation Committee meetings to reflect what you just said.
Yes, that's right. I'll make that.
Do we have a second? Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
Thank you.
We now have committee and other reports. Planning and Zoning Committee, Chairwoman Debbie Cloninger.
Okay, so we met on March 1st, and the members that were present were myself, Allison Love, and Bump Roddy. We had 6 items on our agenda. The first was discussion permitting of schools, AGC, AGC1, and OI. So it's already going to council agenda for approval. And then the second item is our county attorney discussed regarding a technical study, and we are recommending modification to the technical study ordinance, which would allow planning committee, staff, and council to request more information on rezonings. The third item is a discussion on proposed tree conservation changes, and we approved the modification recommended by staff. The fourth item is we had a continued discussion regarding event venues, and we approved the recommended changes thus far, and we're still looking at more options. Okay, then our fifth item, we had a discussion regarding gravel roads, and we voted to deny any gravel road options in York County. Our last item, we discussed the TIAs, and after a year of evaluation, we voted to allow staff to bring back updated thresholds that will allow for fewer required TIAs to our committee.
Thank you, ma'am. Economic Development Committee meeting, Chairman Tom Audette.
Yes. So present tonight was Councilwoman Love and Councilman Huckabee in regards to matters involving Mountie receiving feedback from them, and that was the recap of our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We do not have any citizen concerns. We move now to council member new non-agenda comments. Do we have any? Mr. Roddy?
I just want to say, Debbie, that was a very thorough recap of our meeting. It was really a good meeting. Tom, yours was kind of short and brief.
Yes.
I don't know what's going on with you. I mean,
Try to refine it to like 15 minutes.
I'm the detail-oriented person.
Okay. I'll just say, just in recap for tonight, you know, we're faced with a lot of tough decisions, and I just want the public to know that we take them very, very seriously. We put a lot of time, effort, and energy into every single decision, and I want people to know that I'm proud to serve with all 7 of the other 6 members of council. We don't always agree, but when we go in the back and come out, we all respect each other's opinion and votes, and that's what we're here for. If this was any other system design where we all had to agree, we wouldn't get anything done. So I just want to say to my fellow council members, to my right and my left, that we're here to do the business and we don't always agree, but at the end of the day, we respect everyone's opinion on what we're doing.
Any other comments? I do have one, and I need to circulate this to council. So we had our strategic plan, the council did, it seems like a year ago, but I think it was just a week ago. And we worked really hard and came away with a few action items from council. I've discussed this with management and vice chair, and I'm not sure I've communicated this to the rest, but we've got to follow through with what we are going to do. We have our council decided to agree to meet at our next workshops. They typically are an hour. We're going to give it at least 2 hours to take up for our next 3 workshops. The first of which is next week, which will be dealing with growth management. The topics were adequate public facilities, acre lot density, flexible zoning classifications, preservation, conservation, and agriculture business strategies, the affordable housing piece. We did not approve a study, but we agreed to gather information from others. I think that one was actually going to be moved to economic development. And then if time is left, we would discuss the capital projects issue. Workshop number 2 in April is economic development, the development overlay, FELO money, communications with council on that, which I think we'll spend a good bit of time talking about that. And workshop number 3 is in general dealing with communications internal and external, public information, get some information from them, and communications information with our other departments. So, yes, ma'am.
I just want to say that, you know, when I go out of town, I love to watch other councils. Like, I tune in down in Hilton Head a lot and watch, and, you know, they're talking about, you know, things they throw in that turtles can get caught in and turning lights off for turtles. And so I've watched things in different counties, and I just have to say that the passion that's up here in these 7 seats goes a long way in your favor if you're a resident of this county. And like Bump says, we're not always going to agree. We usually do agree, but we're not always going to agree. And so if we all did agree, you wouldn't need but I've said this before, you wouldn't need but 1 or 2 of us up here. And that would likely not include me at that point, because if we all agreed, it wouldn't be near as much fun. So the other thing that I want to tell you is that in 2020, people of the Bethel and Lake Wiley area in my district were met with a proposal by me to purchase green space, and they passed that referendum that we got on the ballot with about 67% in favor. And we would like to invite the rest of the county and all of staff and management to a community bonfire that we're doing this coming Saturday from 5 to 10 p.m. It's going to be in Lake Wiley on one of the 87-acre property that the folks of the Bethel and Lake Wiley area purchased. So it's a big bonfire. You have to bring your own seating at this point, and we would love to have you. You can certainly go to our new website for that, and that is the Bethel Lake Wiley Park District. And it is a killer bonfire. Our fire departments, both Clover and Lake Wiley, Bethel, come and they build the fire and they extinguish the fire. And you can just follow the smoke signals to get there. We'd love to have you.
Mr. Huckabee.
I was only going to mention that we have our Health and Environmental Protection Committee meeting tomorrow at 4:30, which is our first meeting.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Cloninger?
Yes. My folks are still here. They're hanging around.
And smiling.
I just want to thank you guys so much for coming and being your comments were just so great. And you're a small tribe now. I'm going to make some warnings. There was a saying, you've awakened a sleeping giant, and beware. Because we're going to look at some studies that are coming in the next couple of weeks, and I certainly will make you aware of those. But when I ran for office, I didn't knock on thousands of doors, and all you people out there helped me. We walked, we didn't ride, we walked neighborhoods, neighborhood after neighborhood after neighborhood, and asked for your vote. And you voted me overwhelmingly. I was running against a giant. I was David. And I beat him bad. And it was because you know that when I say something and that I care for you and I care for my community and I'm going to protect you with everything in me, you can count on that, and you can count on me.
Real quick. First of all, I want to thank everybody that came tonight for your comments. It's, again, as we mentioned earlier, it's about the communication and about hearing every word that you have to say so we can work together as we move forward. I appreciate it. Thank you. The other thing I want to mention, our partnership with the community when it comes to fundraisers and 5Ks. Last fall, we did a 5K race for Defending the Fatherless, which is a great opportunity to feature Ebenezer Park. We do have some other 5K fundraising coming up here in the fall. I know that that your group has been working on, but the point is that we're looking to partner with the community to feature our parks and also to support causes that are critical to our area. Just want to share that with y'all. Thank you.
Do we have a motion for executive session?
Yes, we do. Receive legal advice, opioid litigation updates.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll go straight into executive session.
All right.
We are out of executive session. No action was taken. Do we have any motions?
Yes, one motion. A motion to approve participation in the new opioid settlement agreement with the National TVA Team, Allergan, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, subject to local litigation council approval.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. We have a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.